Quay actually arranged for our speaker, but Matt couldn't be here today. So I'm more than happy to introduce Tyler Wicks. I got to know Tyler while I was mayor because at the time, he was working at Bays Mountain. Uh, he was there when Carter and Cash came in, the Bobcat twins. He gave them some tennis balls and he taught them how to play fetch. Okay, I lied. but Michael Borders, his boss, is here, and he didn't want to be outdone, so he says, I can do better than that. I can make the wolves howl anytime. And Tyler said, well, how you do that? He says, I threatened to cut their budget. Okay. We've only had, Tyler's the fourth director of Parks and Rec. We've had a really distinguished department over the years. Kitty Frazier, a lot of y'all knew Kitty, and she retired recently, and they did a little reorganization, and he may talk about that some. Tyler grew up in Rockwood, Tennessee, where he graduated from high school there, and he graduated from East Tennessee State University. He went to work for the state of Tennessee in their state parks department, and he joined the city by getting with the Bays Mountain Crew in 2021. He's a certified park ranger, and then just recently, like I said, he was named the director of Parks and Rec. He's married to Nicole. He has a son Hayden, who's 2 years old, who's even more fierce than the Bobcats. And give a big Kiwanis welcome to Tyler Wicks.
Okay. Keep it close to your mouth.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about Kingsport Parks, and I did do a lot of homework for this presentation, but it was good homework because as a new director of Parks and Rec, it was important for me to learn the history of Kingsport as well as the department. So I'm going to kind of try to guide you all through how parks got started in Kingsport, what their original founding purpose was for the city, and how we are using that information to shape Kingsport Parks and Recreation today. So Kingsport, as you all probably know, was founded as a modern model city. And it was born from a plan, originally chartered in 1917, and the city's founders hired John Nolan, who was a nationally renowned landscape architect, to design this model city. It was supposed to be a community that balanced industry, housing, green space, parkland. Really, J. Fred Johnson's vision for Kingsport was a city where you could work and live. It was not just seen as an industrial city, but also a city where you could live and enjoy your time. So Nolan envisioned that modern model city that would be efficient, healthful, and beautiful. He placed a lot of emphasis on integrating beauty into landscape architecture, into the architecture of downtown. Nolan himself was inspired a lot by Frederick Law Olmsted. If you are a fan of landscape architecture, you will have heard of Frederick Law Olmsted. He did Central Park. He did the Biltmore. He's really regarded as the modern founder of the modern city park, as modern landscape architecture. Frederick Law Olmsted, unlike his predecessors, saw parks as a place for everybody. He really revolutionized the idea that parks were not a place for the elite and the upper class. They were supposed to be a place, a public service provided by government to the masses, not just for one group of people. So it's no wonder Nolan studied under Frederick Law Olmsted's son. That's who actually taught John Nolan landscape architecture. So it's no wonder that he integrated parks and green space into all of his plans for cities. And this is actually a quote from the city of Chattanooga, because Nolan also did their plan for the city of Chattanooga. They said Nolan's plan reflected his belief that parks were not ornamental luxuries, but essential urban infrastructure for health, equity, beauty, and long-term prosperity. So Chattanooga, for instance, they recently redid their Parks and Rec master plan, and they focus very heavily on John Nolan's original plan for the city of Chattanooga and bolstering those parks in areas that John Nolan had originally envisioned for the people of Chattanooga, just as a little fact for you all. So this was one of John Nolan's drawings for downtown. This is probably the clearest drawing of downtown I could find from his works. You can orient yourself up there. This laser, nope, it doesn't work. Okay, so you can see Church Circle up there and Kingsport Inn, that's where City Hall is now. John Nolan had actually originally planned for 2 large parks to be downtown. Those would be right here where the clock circle is. You can see them on the left and right. That land was eventually sold and developed. It was not maintained as park space, but that was his original intention for downtown. You can also see all of these streets are lined with little dots. Those are all trees. John Nolan was very big on having these park-like boulevards in cities that were all lined with trees so that no matter where you went in the city, it felt like you were in a park. And that's no more evident than up there at Church Circle where it was encompassed by trees. I imagine if John Nolan was to be dropped in Church Circle today, he would be very pleased with how it turned out. It is very much so luscious and green, and when you drive through there, you do feel like you're driving through a park. So once John Nolan did his plan, there was a slow start to building recreation infrastructure in the city of Kingsport. And that wasn't for a lack of vision or a lack of trying. There were just a lot of other things that needed to be built first. We needed to get roads built, houses built. There were influx of employees who were working at an ever-growing Tennessee Eastman company. The city needed a clean supply of drinking water that needed to be built on Bays Mountain. So building park infrastructure, recreation infrastructure in the city of Kingsport didn't really start up until the mid-1930s with the construction of the American Legion Pool. And the original American Legion Pool was a big deal for this area. It was a very large pool. It was actually dedicated by the governor and a senator in 1937, and it was constructed for a measly cost of $53,000. If we could do that today, we'd have pools in every neighborhood, I promise. But that was an American Legion project that actually was not a city or government project. The American Legion actually paid for that pool to be built. They worked with the city, but it was American Legion who did the fundraising and got a lot of the funds to build that pool. So Kingsport's parks and recreation really did not start until the late 30s in terms of the city of Kingsport doing anything with parks and recreation. In 1938, citizens voted heavily in favor, as you can see there, of seeking federal funding to build a new armory and recreation building. I'm sure we all know what building that is. That is the Civic Auditorium, which still stands today. The city approved Alan Dryden to build that auditorium and for the board and the city to also purchase Legion Pool. What I found interesting when I was reading minutes of old board meetings and some newspaper articles about this is there was a big push from the city that if the people of Kingsport wanted these recreation facilities, they needed to own them. They wanted it to go to a vote. They wanted the people to be a grassroots efforts to build these recreation assets to serve the citizens of Kingsport. And so by 1939, the board bought 37.6 acres for new playgrounds and parklands. This is all mostly around what is Civic Auditorium today. And they contracted with a company out of Knoxville for $137,000 to build Civic Auditorium. Also out of this same movement came the building of J. Fred Johnson Stadium, which was built directly adjacent to Civic Auditorium. So you really had this whole recreation row taking shape. You had Legion Pool, Civic Auditorium, J. Fred Johnson Stadium, and what was at the time called City Park, but we now call J. Fred Johnson Park. So this is a very nice image right after the completion of Civic Auditorium. You can see the big mud field there next to it. I also find it interesting, you can still see some trees on the hill up there. That would be where Dobbins Bennett High School is now. This was really vacant land. There wasn't much built in this area at the time. This was really Kingsport's expansion out into new areas outside of downtown. This is another nice image showing that kind of recreation row where the city was really investing in these assets for the community. You have Legion Pool right here, Civic Auditorium, J. Fred Johnson Stadium, and the park in the distance there. Again, notice where DB High School stands today. It's just a hill at this point. And so we all know what happened directly following the construction of Civic Auditorium. Obviously, we became a nation at war, which dramatically changed everything for Kingsport. Kingsport was an industrial town. It was built to be an industrial town, and during the war, it was an industrial engine. So this engine roared to life. The construction of Holston Ordnance Work and Eastman Chemical also expanded their operations during this time to support wartime efforts, brought thousands of new workers to town. One of the sources I was reading said that everyone was cramped, but nobody complained because they felt it was their patriotic duty to bring all these people to town to build ordinances and to work at Eastman. So the city really wanted to bring on someone who could actually engage all of these people in some recreation time. And they did that through the Civil Defense Corps. They brought on the first director of Parks and Recreation, W.C. McHorris. Mayor Schul mentioned that I'm the fourth. He was the first. And he was hired in 1942. And he actually came from the Douglas Dam Recreation Area, where he was the director of. And he got right to work engaging the public in recreation programs. Again, I read a lot of newspaper clippings to prepare for this presentation, and he was very big on if we have to give the people something to do that they enjoy doing because they are working long hours, they are living in cramped spaces, and it is our job to engage them in beneficial recreation. He was later quoted, this is a later picture of him quoted as saying about the only thing they had as recreation before was some baseball at the Civic Auditorium, and one school had a playground. That was the extent of parks and recreation in the city of Kingsport in 1942 when he came on board. Mr. McHorris here really oversaw a ginormous expansion in what Kingsport Parks and Recreation did, and he's really the father of everything that came later. A lot of it was done by him alone. For much of his time, he was the only employee in Parks and Recreation, aided by a bunch of volunteer groups. And what he really did was in 1948, he engaged with a company out of New York to develop what they called the Graves Plan. So Charles Graves, he worked for the National Recreation Association out of New York, and this was really the first coordinated plan for citywide parks since Nolan had done his original plan for the city of Kingsport. And they proposed the city expand their assets into 5 parks, all of which I promise you all have probably heard of. What was Reedy Creek Cloud Park, with the side of the old city dump that is now a dump processing facility. Compton Terrace, as it was called, or the 50s at the time, which is the Hammond Street area. That park is still there. Riverview Park, which is in the Riverview community, which was recently renamed Jack Pierce Park at Riverview in honor of Jack Pierce. And Oak Borden Park, it was originally called Oak Park. It was later changed to be called Borden Park, between Borden Mills and the Borden Village. And then Memorial Park, which is the land across from J. Fred Johnson Stadium. If you read the Graves Plan, they basically say, you already own one side of the road, why don't you just go ahead and buy the other and make it a park? So all of these parks except Cloud Park are actually still in existence today. And this was the bulk of what McHorris in his early years really worked to develop, were these parks across Kingsport. So to summarize kind of this history of Kingsport parks and to put it all into perspective, all park systems are built on a vision. Kingsport's vision really had 3 phases, I would call it. You had John Nolan, who wanted to design this beautiful city with streets lined with trees, beautiful green spaces downtown that really made people feel like they lived somewhere that was good to live and not just an industrial town. And you have the 1930s and 40s where you have this citizen movement and this citizen investment into actually building recreation assets at the auditorium, J. Fred Johnson Park and Stadium, and playgrounds around that area. And then you have that Graves Plan, which actually said, okay, we've got this core recreational area, we've got downtown developed, now let's start going out into the communities and placing parks in the communities around town. So, things that I took away from what I learned is that a lot of our parks are rooted in the community. They were either created by citizen votes, they were created by partnership, or they were created by a local leader who believed in Kingsport. The focus of Kingsport parks from the beginning were to build a better place to live. We wanted Kingsport to be a good place to live. And this is really something from Frederick Law Olmsted's philosophy. He's often quoted as saying that parks are the lungs of a community. City services, water, sewer, police, fire, those touch all individuals. but parks are a place where all individuals can come together, which is a much different mission than just those basic city services. So today we have those same principles. We want community parks and programs for the people of Kingsport. We want to continue this legacy of being an organization that provides spaces for people to come together, that provides spaces for programs, youth athletics, senior programming, and that is our mission. So Kingsport Parks and Rec today. So the Department of Parks and Recreation operates nearly 40 parks and facilities and hundreds of programming, engaging the free time of thousands of Kingsport citizens. Like Mayor Scholl referenced, we actually recently reorganized. So in Parks and Rec now, we have athletics, youth athletics, which was Parks and Recreation. We have cultural arts or cultural services, which provides all the public arts and special events throughout town. The Kingsport Aquatic Center, Kingsport Senior Center, and all of Parks Maintenance now report up through the Department of Parks and Recreation. We also have another department, the Department of Bays Mountain, which operates with its own director, and it operates the largest city park in Tennessee, as well as one of the largest in the nation. It's really an impressive operation up there at Bays Mountain, and I do believe it is the crown jewel of Kingsport. Every day I walk into my office, I walk by a quote from J. Fred Johnson that hangs on the wall about the Kingsport spirit. And I think this ties in perfectly with the founding ideas of Parks in Kingsport as to what we're trying to do today. J. Fred Johnson said the Kingsport spirit was a mutual helpfulness and willingness to submerge self-interest beneath the individual effort to assure the greater good for the greatest number of people. So to that end, I'm going to talk a little bit about projects, and I promise I'm wrapping up. I'm known to speak long. I'm going to talk a little bit about projects that I feel have embodied that Kingsport spirit, have embodied that founding mission of Kingsport Parks, and then talk about a few projects that we have coming up and how you all can help us. So the carousel, where the model city still spins, this is in the Department of Parks and Recreation. The carousel project began a long time ago, and it was entirely a local-driven operation. It features hand-carved animals, rounding boards, that all tell the story of Kingsport. This reflects in the craftsmanship that helped build Kingsport. Kingsport was built by men and women who had exceptional skill, and this is a continuation of that tradition. And it embodies those civic ideas that Nolan set out in the founding of Kingsport along with J. Fred Johnson, that parks are beautiful, shared spaces, and it's where our community comes together to meet. And that story is not better told anywhere than the carousel.
Amen.
Yeah. So, and the carousel park really ties into that idea. The carousel itself ties into that idea of a connected city, connected community. It's right here downtown. It's got a park attached to it, a farmer's market, food city, and it easily connects to the Greenbelt, linking it back to the city system of public spaces. When you think of a project that went right, I think Carousel and Carousel Park are one of those projects that come to mind. The Senior Center, this is another one of my favorite projects that I think really embodies those ideas of community. Kingsport, you may not know this, has what we believe to be the largest senior center in Tennessee by membership. We do not know of another senior center that has more members than ours. We have over 5,000 members at the Kingsport Senior Center. They offer recreation, education, wellness, and social connection for all the seniors here in Kingsport. You have to be 50 to join. And it represents Kingsport's evolution from that planned city to a purposeful community where people can live their whole lives. You can come to Kingsport, get a job, raise your family, retire, and live the rest of your life here in Kingsport. It embodies that idea that J. Fred Johnson set out in the beginning, that this is not just a place where you work, but a place where you live. And then our newest program, Youth Flag Football. We are big on building communities through play and engaging with children through recreational sports. We had over 150 participants across multiple age groups, and for those of you that don't know, flag football is co-ed, so it was boys and girls getting out there and building these skills. We focused on sportsmanship, teamwork, and skill development. We really emphasize with our kids play over pressure. We are there to have a good time. We are there to develop our skills and have a little bit of friendly competition. So this program was great because it brought together families from across the city who were able to share these experiences. We had a great finale at Hunter Wright Stadium, another great facility here in the city, where we had a finale of a championship games. Right here is one of the championship teams in the lower right corner. The Vikings, you can see myself and Vice Mayor Darrell Duncan there handing out medals to those teams. So looking ahead for the next chapter, we really want to bring these ideals together. I see three main ideals we have to look at as we build the future of Kingsport Parks together. We have to have a respect for the past. We have to preserve and elevate the legacy of J. Fred Johnson, Nolan, these other founding fathers of Kingsport, and maintain and reimagine our current spaces in light of their past. We have to innovate for a new generation. We're all about engaging with kids, and kids engage different with every generation. We have an esports person on my staff who does esports programming with kids, and it's extremely popular. And we're always looking for those innovative ways to get kids engaged with the community and engaged with one another. And we have to be responsive to citizens. So I'm really big on my staff. We listen, we talk, we want to know what people want to see. So we're really big on engaging through surveys, public meetings, and just normal conversations. We want to reaffirm that Kingsport Parks belong to the people. They're shaped by their voices, but they're sustained by their participation. So we need people out in our parks engaging with our staff and engaging with our programming. So just a couple of new spaces and then I'll be done. Riverwalk Park, those of you who have not seen it going up on Industry Drive. This was a partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield. It nearly exceeded $8 million in investment. It features a lot of new play, so inclusive playgrounds for all ages and ability, outdoor fitness station, splash pad, family play zone. It has trail and river access, improving encouragement for walking and biking. It's right there on the green belt. I think this park hits all three of these metrics we wanted. We have a respect for the past, so this is one of Kingsport's most historically significant areas, right there along the river. We actually are working with a group right now to put an installation in there to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country, which will happen the same year this park opens. It's innovative. It's got play features that people want to see. Pickleball courts. Who would imagine we'd be building all these pickleball courts 10 years ago? But it does come with 4 new pickleball courts. And it also is responsive to what citizens want. We constantly hear from citizens, we want pickleball courts, we want splash pads, we want playgrounds, we want somewhere where we can take our kids that they can enjoy themselves in a safe environment. And the last project I'll talk about, because this is a special project to me, is planning for these older parks and these older spaces that will need revitalization in the future. So Glen Bruce, while not one of the original parks that Nolan envisioned, it kind of feels that need of green space downtown, just like Nolan had visioned. And it serves as a space in an otherwise urban environment that you wouldn't get. But the park is in pretty desperate need of renovation. I look at this picture of that beautiful landscaping and pavers and such, and the park just does not live up to that expectation today. It's a much older park, and what was once a largely manicured urban landscape has kind of fallen into disrepair. The pavers are coming up, the landscaping needs redone. The fountain is not the centerpiece of grandeur it once was. It once was a very big fountain with lights and everything in it, and we're just not able to provide that in the current infrastructure. And most importantly, I think in the current Glen Bruce Park, the story of downtown is lost. That park should be an emblem of what Kingsport was, what the ideas were that founded Kingsport, and that is really lost in the current Glen Bruce Park. So we got together, Michael and me and a team, with a landscape architect out of Florida, and told her we wanted something that would pay homage to the original plans of John Nolan, pay homage to the founders of Kingsport. And this is just one concept of a plan. Obviously, nothing's been approved or appropriated. These are just the very early planning stages. But I think it demonstrates our thought processes for where we're wanting to go with Kingsport Parks. You can see a nice new central fountain, nice new gardens. These are all plants with play features embedded throughout the park, and a nice new play area for kids in the downtown area. Trying to really balance the ideas of a nice urban green space with a place to engage with kids. And I think the landscape architect did a very good job, because if you overlay this with what John Nolan had originally intended to go downtown, I think you can see the resemblance. Nice big trees, crisscrossing pathways, nice green space, places for people to connect and come together. So again, wrapping up, there are three things that I'm really concerned with when we move forward in parks. It's respect for the past, innovation for a new generation, and responsiveness to citizens. So we are doing a new master plan, and this is the last slide I have, I believe. We are required every 5 years to do a master plan by the state of Tennessee. The last plan was adopted in 2021, so you can do the math. We have to have a new plan adopted in 2026, and this plan will guide how we shape parks for the future in Kingsport. You can see everything that we have to include in that plan, but the big one for today is community input. We want to know what our community would like to see. And to that end, there is a survey on our website. You can scan this QR code if you'd like to take the survey. It closes on Monday. We also have 2 public meetings coming up where we are going to engage with citizens to see how they would like the future of their park shaped in Kingsport. So that is all I have. I'm happy to take questions. Yep. Happy to.